Today we're going to talk about something that every educator, caregiver, coach, anyone that deals with parents are going to have to deal with sooner or later, and that's dealing with difficult parents. Now, these moments can feel very stressful because you don't know in this day and age if they have a knife, a gun. You don't know. They're just coming at you very, very heated, and it's hard. But there are some strategies to use to help you in those situations. The main thing you need to remember are the 3 C's. Stay calm, confident, and in control of yourself. That will help the situation tremendously if you just remain calm, confident, and in control. Now, most of the time, when parents get upset, it comes down to 3 things: frustration, stress, miscommunication, or fear. Many times they're worried about their child, they've heard something secondhanded, or they have their own pressure of their own lives, and dealing with whatever situation is just one more thing on their overwhelmed plate. And so it's not personal at all. It's just they love their baby, and they should. And so we have to treat them that way, that's the most precious thing they have. And yes, they're upset, but we're going to help work them through that. So the first thing is you need to stay calm. And that's easier said than done, like I said, if they're coming at you. But you just need to kind of nod your head and listen and say things like, I know this is really important to you. And let's talk about what you've heard has happened, and how can I make this better for you? I'm taking this seriously, and I want to make sure that you are heard in what is your problem. Step 2 is listen without talking. Most of the time, they just want to get it off their shoulders. And so I would just let them vent. I would just sit and listen, just kind of nod my head. I always got out paper and pen, and I wrote down keywords because I wanted them to know it was important. What they were saying was the most important thing I had going on at that moment. And so I would write down my keywords, and I would say, oh, every now and then. I can understand why that would feel frustrating. To let them know, as a mom, I would feel as frustrated too if that was really what happened. Of course, I wouldn't say if that's really what happened, but in my mind, that's what I'm thinking. And so step 3 is you validate their emotion. You say things like, I see what you mean. You're not telling them you think they're right. You're telling them you understand that they're feeling frustrated, or they're angry, or that someone has told them that Billy got hit at recess. You let them know, oh, yes, ma'am, I understand. And if that were my child, I would feel frustrated too. You let them know, I'm on your side. I'm here to work with you. This is not the time to get into no, that's not what happened. He didn't do this, he did that. You let them get it all out on the table, whatever it is that's bothering them. The next step is that you tell them, okay, we're going to collaborate on a plan. And many times that means having a conference with the teacher. Now, when I would do that, it wouldn't be that same day because that parent's already upset. I would tell the parent, look, this is my top priority today, but I need to do a full investigation to find out what happened, and then I will get back with you. Now, it might not be today because sometimes investigations take a while, but I can assure you by tomorrow, I will call you. And probably I'm going to want you to come in and let's sit down and talk with the teacher so that we can get a handle on what's going on with your child, because your child's so important to us as they are to you. And so I would schedule an appointment with them when I would call the next day, and I would give them a brief synopsis, just not to drag it out, of what happened and why it happened the way it did. But then I would also say, but I still would like for you to come in so we can talk with the teacher. And I would have them come. But before, I would get the teacher in my office privately and say, look, Mrs. Smith is upset about X, Y, and Z. And it was very heated yesterday when she came in. So no matter what happens, I want you to remain calm. And if she gets out of control in any way, if she starts using inappropriate language or yelling at you, then I'm going to stop the meeting. And I would, and I did several times throughout my career, because we can't solve anything. If someone is that heated, you can't solve a problem. So I would tell the teacher, you remain calm, you let me do the talking, and when I'm ready for you to talk, I will say, okay, Mrs. Hernandez, who would be the teacher, let's just say, I want you to share with Mrs. Smith what happened on the playground yesterday. And I would tell her prior, keep it to the facts, no emotion, no, well, he always gets in trouble on the playground. No, just the facts. And I would let Ms. Smith, the parent, share their concerns, and then I would, hopefully it would end in a positive note. We would have a plan moving forward, and the three of us could walk out together. Like I said, I've had to stop meetings before because the parent was unruly, and I would just say to the parent, oh, Mrs. Smith, I'm so sorry, but this meeting is not being productive, so I'm going to let Mrs. Hernandez get back to her students because they're missing out on teaching right now. And then you and I can continue to talk about this, or we will reschedule the conference. And I've done that many times because you just cannot let a parent abuse your teachers either. So I would do that. Then if I found out the teacher did something wrong, I would support them in front of the parents as much as I could. Now, there's times, it's almost impossible. But even if it were a situation where it was at recess, the teacher wasn't watching the student like they should, I would try to make an excuse. I've put it back on myself many times. I've said, I'm so sorry. Maybe that was my fault because I had just shared an email that they were going to be working on this at faculty meeting this afternoon, and I'm sure she was talking to her friend Miss Blue to talk about what they were going to do during faculty meeting, and let me take responsibility for that. That was bad timing on my part. And usually that would help too, because then the parent would say, oh, well, the principal's willing to take responsibility for this. And then once the parent left, I would get Ms. Hernandez back in my office, and I would say, look, we wouldn't be in this situation if you had been monitoring your students at recess like I have instructed you to do many times. So I think it's important that you follow back up with the teacher too in anything that they could have done differently, or even to say, you didn't do a thing wrong. That was totally a miscommunication. I'm proud of the way you handled yourself in the office. Teachers often wonder when they leave your office, how did the principal think that went? So I think it's important that you follow up with them after school or the next morning and just say, hey, I thought you did excellent sticking to the facts or sharing an idea of what to try differently next time. And so I really appreciate that. The number one thing, though, is to keep all conversations with parents respectful, whether it's phone conversation or an in-person conversation. But you also have to set up some boundaries as an administrator, both for you and your teachers. I would have parents email me at night, and I checked my email every single night, but I never emailed them back that night unless I felt like, oh, this is going to escalate to a bigger situation if I don't. Because I didn't want them to feel like they had 24/7 access to me. And I don't want my teachers either. I would tell my teachers, don't give them your phone number. Now, some of them would, but I would tell them, when you're at home, That's what email is for. They can email you, and then if you choose to call them, you may, but you don't have to give up your entire life to be on 24/7 call. That's not what the job is. And so I think when parents see that, they can't just walk in. They have to make an appointment unless they're irate about something that you can handle quickly. But even then, I would tell my teachers, if a parent happened to show up at their door in the morning, to say, "Oh, Miss Smith, I'm so sorry you're upset. You know, I've got 20 kids waiting on me, so I want to give this my full attention. So can we meet after school tomorrow or before school tomorrow so I can give you my full attention, because I can't watch them and listen to you intently, and I want to help you resolve this problem." So that took it kind of off the teacher. And I would also tell them to use me. Say, "Mrs. Davidson said that we cannot have a parent conference when we've got kids in the room. So I know you're upset. I can either call you this afternoon, or if you feel it'd be better to come back in, I'll be glad to listen to whatever your concern is." But now in the office, if a parent is in the office raising all kinds of ruckus, then my secretary knew to call an administrator immediately. And one of us would go up there and politely bring them back to the principal's office or the assistant principal's office, mainly the conference room, because that kind of diffused the situation in itself. You weren't bringing them into the principal's office. You were sitting down to have a conversation with them. But that would get them out of the main office so other parents weren't seeing them act all crazy, and it got their situation resolved so they didn't just leave my school and go to central office and complain how no one would help them. But just on day-to-day, unless it were something major like that they were up there causing a huge disruption, then I would say, "I'll give you a call back. You know, I'm having to deal with this situation right now, but I promise you I'll give you a call right back." And I stuck to that. I did not let the day go by without me returning a call. In fact, my goal was never to let 2 hours go by without calling a parent. And even at that, I had parents that would call and say, "I called you and you haven't called me back." And I would say, "Well, on this note from my secretary, it says you called at 11 o'clock. It's only 1. I said, "You know, I was in the cafeteria helping with monitoring student discipline and making sure everybody got fed lunch. I hadn't had time to call you back, but how can I help you now?" That kind of thing. So they knew that they would hear back from me, that I wasn't just gonna not call them, because if you really want to get a parent upset, don't call them back. Then they will be furious and they will go to central office and say, "Miss Davidson never returns my call." I mean, I had the reputation in the community of, whether they liked me or they didn't, they knew what to expect. And they would tell you that. They would say, "You know, she runs a tight ship, but my kid's learning, and that's the most important thing." I even had a school board member tell me that. He said, "You know, some people say, well, you run a tight ship," and I told him, "Yes, but you get results because your teachers are teaching. You're not breaking up fights, trying to deal with crazy stuff all day. You are running a tight ship so that you run it with your teachers, they run it with their students, and then everybody succeeds." And that's what we want for all students. But I do appreciate you listening. And if you have some suggestions on things you tried with difficult parents, please share in the comments so we can all in our community learn together. I'm no longer in the classroom. I'm retired and I'm enjoying that part of my life. But obviously I still love teaching, or I wouldn't be on here talking. So if I can help you in any way, don't hesitate to reach out. Thanks and have a great day.